Hello everyone, Bashrop here, and in this video I'll share 10 tips to help you keep warm. While these tips will be particularly helpful to Misery players, they can be useful on all difficulties. Many of them are somewhat obscure, and the video assumes you already know the basics, as well as all the tips mentioned in the previous video, such as the double torch trick. The first tip is something that keeps surprising people when they see me use it, probably because it's not super obvious. Putting an insulated flask near a fire prevents the drinks from cooling down. Note that it won't warm the drinks up if they cool down, it just stops them from getting cold. It can be convenient to warm up drinks, put them in your flask and drop it. You can just pick up the flask with ready teas instead of each tea individually. It also removes the need for tea jiggling. Tip number 2 is probably the most known of the ones I'm going to share, but also the biggest game changer on Misery and late game interloper, and that's fire burn time being affected by air temperatures. The bonus is gained when air temperature is below 10 degrees Celsius and maxes out at double duration at -30 or lower. On Misery, it's pretty much always colder than that, unless you're inside, which is why you may want to start fires in caves and stay in the outer part of the cave. Combined with level 5 fire starting, one stick will keep the fire going for over 24 minutes, and a single lump of coal will be enough for 3 hours. You won't see this bonus duration on the timer though, it will just deplete slower. It's possible to get this bonus inside as well, it's just unlikely to reach the max bonus that way, though in very cold regions it can get cold enough to reach the full bonus even in the back part of the cave. The bonus duration to a fire won't be applied at all if the fire is in a different loading screen though, so make sure to put enough fuel in if you're leaving a stove on in your base. Loading screens bring me to tip number 3. While fires in another loading screen do not gain the bonus duration, they are also not affected by wind. So if you're in a location with no access to a fully windproof fire and you see wind picking up, you could dump a bunch of fuel into the fire and enter a building, wait out the wind, and when you return, the fire will still be happily burning. There's one more trick involving loading screens that's definitely not intended, and this one involves torches and flares. When you leave a lit torch or a flare in a different loading screen, the game does not track how much the torch burns while you're away, only the fact that it's lit and the remaining burn time when you leave the loading screen. What this means in practice is that if you light a torch that has 40 minutes of burn time left, and you return in less than 40 minutes, the torch will still be there with 40 minutes of burn time left. This could be abused pretty heavily by crafting 100% torches, which last 90 minutes, allowing you to sleep in 1 hour intervals while keeping the torch lit on the other side of the loading screen without spending any fuel. This is a little high effort and in my opinion a bit too broken to use, but it's an option nonetheless. But even without exploits, torches are very useful for getting the most out of your fuel. Pulling a torch removes only 10 minutes from your fire, but a pulled torch can last up to 45 minutes before it burns out, so if you're trying to save matches and want to wait out bad weather, but you are running out of fuel, standing around with a lit torch, passing time until it nearly burns out, and chaining another torch might save you a match. And once you burn out most of your torches, you can harvest them back into sticks, light another fire, and repeat. Though usually this trick is useful for shorter time periods until the wind changes. Speaking of fuel efficiency, with level 5 fire starting, the bonus burn time benefit you gain breaks the game a little bit. As mentioned before, pulling a torch only removes 10 minutes from the fire. However, with level 5 fire starting bonus, adding a stick to the fire adds almost 12 minutes. You can probably see where this is going. By pulling torches and recycling them back into the fire, you can actually gain burn time by reusing the same sticks over and over and taking them out. Note that this is less useful than it sounds, since it still requires you pulling a lot of torches and then harvesting them, so it's a lot of time spent clicking and staring at your inventory full of burnt torches. You probably know that when your fire runs out of fuel, it doesn't die instantly. What you probably don't know is that the time before the embers die can be consistent and predictable. Embers always last 8 in-game minutes and they are not affected by air temperature or firestarting skill bonuses. There are few caveats when it comes to using embers though. Embers are only guaranteed to get their full 8-minute duration on fresh campfires. If you use a pre-placed fire, the ember duration will be random. A pre-placed fire is anything you can start a fire in that was already there when you came through a loading screen. So it includes all stoves, fire barrels and rim grills by default, but also any campfires you may have started in the past. If you wish to get the full embers duration on a stove or another pre-placed fire for some reason, you can still reset it by starting a fire, letting it burn out, and then starting a new one again. The embers will work correctly until you go through a loading screen again. So embers duration is only reset when the fire dies and a new one is started. This is important to keep in mind if you let a fire go to embers for, say, 2 minutes, then add more fuel. Next time it goes to embers again, there will be only 6 minutes of embers left, not 8. But as long as you don't let the fire go down to embers and only use fresh fires, you can always rely on the duration of the embers being 8 minutes and use it to finish cooking food, boiling water, or heating up teas. It is possible to keep a fire alive during high winds, even without abusing loading screens, as mentioned in tip 3. While you won't be able to start a fire if the wind is already high, you can keep an existing fire going forever, with a few exceptions. This is possible because the wind speed limit that lets you add fuel to the fire is higher than the limit that prevents you from starting one, just like with the torch, except fires are not put out instantly when you cross this limit, but the fire duration drops to 10 minutes instead. And by the time those 10 minutes are up, you will be able to add another stick to the fire, which allows you to wait out the high wind for as long as you like, and move out with a lit torch once the wind dies down. To understand why this is possible, some basic understanding of wind mechanics is necessary. Wind strength consists of base wind speed and gust strength. Base speed is the minimum speed and remains constant until the wind re-rolls. Gusts are highly variable, they come and go within seconds and temporarily spike the wind speed. In simple terms, there are 3 different scenarios involving fires and wind. First, the wind is low enough to not worry about wind at all. Second, gusts kill your fires. That's when this trick comes in handy. Since gusts are variable, you won't be able to keep a fire going for over 10 minutes, but you will be able to keep the fire going forever by adding a stick to the fire once the gust passes. Third, if even the base wind speed is higher than the threshold, then it will be impossible to add a stick to the fire at any point, and your fire will die after 10 minutes. This third scenario is very easy to identify in-game. By simply listening in, the wind sound changes. If the wind sounds like this, it's too strong to add more fuel to a fire. The important thing to remember here is that the third scenario does not naturally occur, and there are only 2 exceptions. The first one should be obvious. Blizzard winds are significantly higher and will be way above the threshold to put a fire out. Outside of blizzards, base wind speed crossing the 40 miles per hour threshold naturally only occurs in a few select regions, which are programmed to be windier than usual. In most regions, such strong winds should never naturally occur. This means that as long as there is no blizzard and you're not in one of the windy regions, you can keep a fire going on even when it's not windproof, as long as you add some fuel every 10 minutes. I mentioned this tip already in the previous video, but I can't stress the usefulness of the campfires against wildlife enough. As of Zone of Contamination update, a campfire will protect you against any aggressive wildlife, even during auroras. I already showed how to kill bears or moose with ease in the previous video, but timber wolves work a bit differently. They still see you, but will not charge you, even if they can get very close. Sometimes you need to move around a bit to get them to run closer to you, then stand still. One timber wolf will stare at you and then run away, but focus on the others, which will just start walking around and will be very easy to shoot. Related to the previous tip, you can walk moose and bears to a location you want using a chain of lit campfires by simply walking from one lit campfire to another instead of shooting them. This is particularly useful for relocating moose, as they give you a couple seconds each time before they charge at you. You'll need to prepare the campfires ahead of time though, as the moose won't stop until the campfire is lit. That's everything for now. Thank you for watching.